Thanks very much for joining us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Oscar Pistorius is sentenced to 5 years for the killing of his girlfriend, but the South African Olympian could be out in under a year. Campaigners against domestic abuse slam the punishment as being too lenient. Also, Africa's top oil executive is killed in a plane crash in Moscow. Known as Mr. Moustache, Christophe de Margerie headed up energy giant Total. And calls for the exit of Central African Republic's president continue as the troubled country battles to restore stability. We hear from a former foreign minister about what she thinks needs to change on the political and security front. First up, in South Africa, campaigners against domestic violence have vowed to push for an appeal against the 5-year sentence handed down to Oscar Pistorius. On Tuesday, following a 6-month trial, the Olympian started his jail time over the killing of his girlfriend last Valentine's Day. The possibility of his early release has left some critics deeply dissatisfied.
Cheers and whistles from the crowd as Oscar Pistorius is taken away to begin his 5-year sentence for killing his girlfriend Reeva Steenkamp. Her parents faced a gauntlet of photographers and reporters after the sentencing hearing.
And is this what you were hoping for?
Not hoping for, but we are satisfied.
Pistorius' family have also said they accept the sentence, but South African women's groups say the decision sends the wrong message.
We are saddened by the sentence, and we are calling for national prosecution for an appeal. That's what we are asking for now. We are not happy with the verdict, and we are not happy with the sentence.
That appeal is a possibility.
The prosecution team is busy studying the case law. Within 14 days, we should be able to make an announcement whether we're going to appeal the matter or not. But certainly, there is an appetite from our side, to appeal the matter.
Pistorius is starting his sentence in prison, but he could be released after as few as 10 months to spend the remainder of his term under house arrest.
Tens of thousands of doses of experimental vaccines against Ebola could be put to real-world testing in West Africa by the start of next year. The World Health Organization says that the rush on international clinical trials could see at least 2 vaccines greenlit for limited distribution relatively soon. Over 4,500 people, mostly in Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone, have died in the epidemic this year. Mass immunization campaigns are still a ways off, but researchers are hoping to move quickly forward on the options so far available.
These trials will all start in the coming 2 weeks, I would say. And we expect both for the chimp adenovirus as well as from the VSV vaccine to have initial results. Of course, these trials will continue for 6 months to a year, but to have initial results about safety and immunogenicity, to have a choice of a dose level by the end of this year, so in December. That's clearly the plan.
Time out for some news in brief. Sudan's president's made a U-turn on his promise not to run again, and his party says he will take part in next year's elections. After 25 years in office, Omar al-Bashir's National Congress Party has announced that he's still the most fit for the job. It's also voted him in as party chairman for another 4-year term. Last year, he'd said the country needed new blood, but it appears he's had a change of heart. Opposition leaders have called for a delay to the April vote, saying they're worried fair elections are unlikely. Burkina Faso's government's to submit a bill calling for a referendum on changing the length of time a president can sit. The step is the latest move by leader Blaise Compaoré to push through revisions that would allow him to stay in power when his term ends next year. In power since 1987, Compaoré has not publicly said that he'll stand for re-election, but the prospect of his return has skyrocketed political tensions. And the trial of 83 supporters of Ivory Coast's jailed former President Laurent Gbagbo has been postponed for at least 2 weeks. The defendants include the ex-leader's wife, Simone. They all face charges of undermining state security, and some, including the former First Lady, are accused of war crimes. That's in connection to post-electoral violence at the end of 2010, in which thousands were killed, and Gbagbo refused to admit defeat. Well, known as Mr. Moustache, Africa's top oil chief has been killed in a plane crash in Russia. Christophe de Margerie headed up oil giant Total. The Frenchman's private plane collided with a snowplow on a Moscow runway late Monday.
Total is the 5th largest oil company in the world and the #1 in Africa. The firm that was managed by Christophe de Margerie is present in 43 countries on the continent. It employs 10,000 workers and 50,000 collaborators, and 30% of its oil production comes from Africa. Christophe de Margerie became the CEO in 2010, and very quickly he looked towards Africa. Under his leadership, Total carried out oil exploration in South Africa, Ivory Coast, Kenya, Mozambique, Uganda, and in Congo-Brazzaville. He's seen here next to President Denis Sassou Nguesso. De Margerie also invested here in Nigeria, Africa's biggest oil producer.
We have many projects in the pipeline, as we say in our jargon. They will make the company grow in the future. There is also the possibility of exploration and new construction permits, and to anticipate new production for 2020, 2030.
But environmentalists like Marco Naessangui in Gabon criticized de Margerie's policies in Africa.
Now the company is more transparent. But I must add that Total continues to support dictatorships in Africa, for example in Congo-Brazzaville and Gabon.
Here, near the oil rig of Djeno in Congo-Brazzaville, local residents accuse Total of polluting the air and the water and of not redistributing its profits. De Margerie's successor will face such criticism in many African countries.
Well, more violence broke out in Central African Republic this week in Bambari, a stronghold of fighters from the Seleka coalition. Well, the country was plunged into bloody chaos after the largely Muslim movement launched a short-lived takeover last year. Violence that was perpetuated by Christian vigilante groups whose brutal revenge attacks have driven most Muslim communities out of the south. Well, an agreement was signed in July aimed at ending the de facto partition, but ongoing clashes and instability have led to calls for the exit of interim President Catherine Samba-Panza. Well, I'm now joined by former Foreign Minister Marie-Reine Hassen. Marie-Reine, thanks very much for coming in to see us.
Thank you.
Now, despite the presence of UN and EU troops on the ground, clashes continue. So what needs to be done to change the strategy so far being used to deal with all the various warring groups involved at the moment?
You know, the international troops are there to help the government. What we need is a strong government to handle, you know, the priorities of the transition. Problem is we don't have a strong government there. If in about 10 months they didn't find a solution for this situation, then we have to have a change and get a team of strong people to handle this situation. And my team and I, people from the party, my party, are ready to go there and handle this problem because despite of the presence of these troops for 10 months, we've seen the situation getting, you know, worse and worse.
So you're saying your party is willing to step in and
yes,
handle the problem, which
absolutely,
is obvious criticism of President Catherine Samba-Panza, but surely transition in circumstances such as these is never going to be easy. What would you do differently?
What we would do differently is just get deep to the roots of the problem. The roots of the problem are poverty, you know. So this country definitely needs good governance, and to have good governance and fight against impunity, because that's what's happening. Anybody can just stand up and get an arm and kill anybody, and they are never punished. So we need a strong governance with strong institutions, and for that we need really capable people to do that. You know, a team of capable people to face the priorities of this period, because this is an exceptional.
But when we're talking about setting up strong institutions in just 10 months, bearing in mind the level of the chaos that the country has seen, can you realistically expect strong institutions to be brought in that time?
You see, the priority there is to disarm all these armed groups, because they are not disarmed. And plus, we discuss with them, so it makes them stronger and stronger. So we need to disarm first, and then, you know, bring them solution for, because people there need to eat. They need to bring their kids to school. They need to have a house to live in. And so it's all economical. So we need to bring economical solution while you are trying to piece down people, to get people, you know, to calm down. You need also to bring them some solution, and that's what's not done. And it's been like that.
Unfortunately, Marie-Reine, that's all we have time for. But
right.
Again, thanks very much for coming in to see us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Marie-Reine Hassen, their former Foreign Minister for Central African Republic. Well, that's it for African News for now. But do stay with us. A short break and more news and headlines coming up.
Anticipate. Take a stand. Be mobile. Defend your position. Be independent. Meet every challenge. Surprise people. Be a leader. Be equipped to understand the world. France 24.